Greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to another installment of An Old Testament Academic Reacts. Well, if you guys watched my discussion with Inspiring Philosophy a couple of weeks ago, then you know that I do not support the argument that Amenhotep II was the pharaoh of the Exodus. So in this installment, I thought that I would present a case for my candidate for the Exodus pharaoh, who is none other than Ramesses II. And one of the first pieces of evidence supporting Ramesses II as a candidate for the pharaoh of the Exodus is synchronisms. A synchronism, if you guys don't know what it is something that ties together rulers to a certain or fixed time. So, for example, we have Muwattili II, who was contemporaneous with Ramesses II, based on inscriptions connecting them to the Battle of Kadesh through the papyrus Raphael and Steely III. Additional sources include the poem of Pentar and the Bulletin, which records the same battle, albeit the former, that is, the poem of Pentar, is somewhat propagandistic, although Egyptologists do think that both of them were accurate. Another example of a synchronism can be found later in ancient history, that is closer to Rome, the Greco-Roman time, is the Black Obelisk, which connects King Jehu of the northern kingdom of Israel with Shalmaneser III. So synchronisms, again, I want to clarify here, synchronisms will join two different rulers, and put them in the same time period. So, furthermore, the Armada Letters also provide information revolving around synchronisms, and it is that we now turn. So I thought that I would actually make a separate slide for this, simply because the Armada Letters have too much information that support indirectly Ramesses II as the better candidate for the pharaoh of the Exodus. And what I mean as supporting Ramesses II as a better candidate, I mean it indirectly, in that Ramesses II really is never mentioned in the Armada Letters, but I think it adds and supports Ramesses II as a candidate of the Exodus pharaoh for a number of reasons. But starting here, the Armada Letters take their name from a place called El Armana, which is a plain on the east bank of the Nile, around 200 miles south of Cairo, where they were actually discovered, hence the name. These tablets are letters written in cuneiform to various kings among the Levant in the 14th century BCE, roughly the 18th dynasty. The Armada Letters also changed the face of chronology. So, during the 19th century, Egyptologists abided by or followed something called the high chronology. However, with this discovery of the Armada Letters, the high chronology fell out of favor with Egyptologists, who then opted instead for a middle or low chronology. A great example of why Amenhotep, therefore, cannot be the pharaoh of the Exodus is because Ea, Eeerdmans VI, dates the reign of Amenhotep III later, that is to say from 1390 to 1352 BCE. This also does not align, that is, the Armada Letters also do not align, therefore, well with another candidate for the pharaoh of the Exodus, namely Thutmose III. These letters, of course, were written in Akkadian, which was the lingua franca, till about the 8th century BCE. And these letters were written between the kings of, or from King Amenhotep III all the way to King Tutankhamun. But what I find fascinating about the Armada Letters is that, like the synchronisms I mentioned above, they pinpoint the 18th dynasty to a few years, much like the poem of Pentar and the Bulletin, Papyrus Raphael and Papyrus Steely do. And they reveal that Ramesses II and Muwattili II, I think I have a typo there, were contemporaneous. Other examples of synchronisms would include EA29, which ties Thutmosis IV with Artatama of Mitanni, and Amenhotep III with Shutararna II, also of Mitanni. Please forgive me for my Mitanni pronunciation. Another bit of information here that adds supports to Ramesses II being a pharaoh of the Exodus is the Merneptah Steely, or more commonly, or some of you guys may know as the Israeli Steely. Now, the Merneptah Steely mentions the people of Israel, hence why it's extremely important here. The Merneptah was the king who succeeded Ramesses II as pharaoh and reigned for 10 years. And it was he who defeated the Libyans during his 5th regnal year. But what I want to pay more attention to is the stele itself. On the stele, it reads, Israel has been wiped out, and its seed is no more. This stele is arguably, and I use the word arguably here, importantly, if I can say that, because it's the earliest mention of Israel. And like I said, I use the term arguably lightly here because you also have something called the Berlin pedestal, which dates to 1550 and 1292 BC. I don't have a lot of time here in this installment to go over the Berlin pedestal, but suffice it to say that it dates to the 18th dynasty, but it's something more about the Exodus than as a whole, instead of just focusing on the candidate for Ramesses II. So the peculiar thing, though, here is in the Egyptian, which has Ramechech, which is that Egyptian hieroglyph you see on the screen, indicating that Israel existed as a foreign people group. But you'll also notice is that on the Israeli Sea, you have also nations with the other hieroglyphic symbol you see on the screen. But when it comes to Israel, they use the former hieroglyph with the two people there and the stick indicating foreign peoples. And following Israel, there is no determinative for land, which is the latter symbol there. So what is interesting about Merneptah is that he was not the firstborn son of Ramesses II, but merely a descendant of Ramesses II, his son, but another son, between Ramesses II and the great royal wife Iset Nofret. Another thing that I think supports the candidate, it may not be much, but I think so, is Merneptah was 70 years old when he assumed the throne. So he was much older, which is why his reign was so short. Now, Ramesses II's firstborn son was Amun-Her-Khepeshef, and he was the son of Ramesses II and Nefertari. Amun-Her-Khepeshef is also well attested in processions with siblings at the temple of Abu Simbel, the temple of Seti I at Abydos, the temple of Der, and Luxor temple. Amun-Her-Khepeshef was also an adult when he died. I think that's noteworthy here because most of us seem to think these were firstborn children, so they must have been children instead of adults. But it's poignant here. It's important here that we note that Amun-Her-Khepeshef was an adult when he died. And he died in the 40th year of Ramesses II's reign, which roughly dates Amun-Her-Khepeshef between 20 and 25 when he died. Amun-Her-Khepeshef was buried in KV5 in the Valley of the Kings on the West Bank at Luxor. This huge and utterly unique tomb, with over 150 chambers, was most likely built for at least 3 or 4 of Ramesses II's sons, if not more. Excavation in the tomb was under the direction of, I put living legends of Egyptology, namely because it's Kent Weeks. If you guys don't know who Kent Weeks is, he's an Egyptologist who I think is now retired. He was super famous when I was growing up as a kid in the 80s and 90s. But anyway, moving on here. So another piece of evidence here is mentioned in the biblical text and also in Egyptological archaeological records is P. Ramesses. Now, it is nearly universally, if not universally accepted, that the Hebrew R Aleph M S S corresponds to the Egyptian R Aleph M S S, which of course is the proper name for Ramses, used by the 11 kings of both the 19th and 20th dynasties. Of course, P. Ramesses is near the old city of Avaris, which was a cult center for Set, and which is where the family of Ramesses II originated. In fact, Seti I built his summer palace at the site in Avaris before Ramesses II ever founded his capital at P. Ramesses. And as I said, there were 11 kings, but 10 out of the 11 kings here never built a city with the exception of Ramesses II, after whom P. Ramesses is built, or named. I meant to say named. P. Ramesses a Nachtu, which translates to the domain of Ramesses II, great in victory. P. Ramesses was later sadly abandoned around 1130 BCE, and it was later called Zoan in the Old Testament. And now we come to the final piece of evidence regarding why I think Ramesses II is the Exodus pharaoh, and that's the problem of propinquity. Let's try saying that 3 times fast. So, during the 18th and early 19th dynasties, the capital of Egypt was Thebes in Upper Egypt. And if you can see by the map here, it's at the far bottom left corner of the map there. That's where Thebes was. However, when Ramesses II assumed the throne, he moved the capital to P. Ramesses after its construction. And if Ramesses, here's where we get into the problem here. And if Ramesses II ruled from Thebes, this would create a problem in the biblical account because of distance. Thebes, you see, is roughly 600 kilometers from P. Ramesses. So this trip would have taken days by boat going down the Nile. Or even by taking a caravan route. It would have taken days, maybe a couple weeks. Exodus 1:11, though, says the enslaved peoples, that is, several ethnic groups, which were among those who left Egypt, namely the Cushites, Libyans, and Amorites, built storage cities, Pithom and P. Ramesses. Throughout Exodus chapters 7 through 11, we find that the text says that Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh to demand that he let the people go. But more specifically here is Exodus 12:31, which states that Moses and Aaron went to Pharaoh, who summoned them during the night. So that means that they were summoned during the night, they saw Pharaoh during the same night, and then left. So how would Moses and Aaron make a trip that is 600 kilometers to Thebes in one night? Seems rather fishy and unlikely to me. So to wrap things up here, I'd like to include my final thoughts. The synchronisms that I mentioned among the Book of the Exodus, the Poem of Pentar, and the Bulletin connect Ramesses II with Muwattili III. And actually, I think it is Muwattili III. I'm going to come back, correct it, but hold on for that. The Armada Letters, like the above synchronism, simply do not support Amenhotep II nor Thutmose III as the pharaoh of the Exodus. So I label that as negative evidence against the early pharaohs for candidates for the Exodus. Ramesses II, despite what Kramer said in his video, did lose his firstborn son, Amun-her-shepshef. Additionally, Ramesses II built and moved the capital of Egypt from Thebes to P. Ramesses in the Nile Delta. And because the capital was moved to P. Ramesses, the distance became much, much shorter between the royal court and the enslaved peoples that it supports. Therefore, it supports the argument that Moses and Aaron did not travel far, but merely 2 kilometers to P. Ramesses to speak to the pharaoh. If the capital were in Thebes at this time, the distance would have been much, much greater. And finally, the book of Exodus reveals that the distance between where the enslaved peoples lived and the royal court was short. So I'd like to thank you guys for watching this installment of why I think Ramesses II is the best candidate for the Exodus pharaoh. And if you'd like this video, please hit the subscribe button, like it, and leave a comment below to tell me your thoughts on Ramesses II as the pharaoh of the Exodus. Till next time, guys. Catch you later.